Hello and good noon. My name is Heman and I'm a Senior Research Associate at South Asia Research Institute for Minorities. You're watching an exclusive interview series by SARIM and get ready to gain insight into the world of human rights campaign and legal strategies with the dynamic and influential Dr. B. Karthik Navayan. He is a highly respected human rights activist, lawyer, scholar, writer. Dr. Navayan has been instrumental in organizing numerous campaigns in Telangana and Andhra Pradesh states. His unwavering commitment to fighting for Dalit rights has earned him a reputation as a true champion of justice. In this interview, we will delve into his experiences and expertise, exploring the challenges he has faced and strategies he has employed to create lasting change. Join us for an emulating conversation with one of the most important voices in human rights movement today. So, without any further ado, my first question is, Mr. Navyan, that what inspired you to become human rights activist and lawyer, and what drew you specifically to working on issues related to Dalit and caste discrimination?
So basically, I am from a scheduled caste community, which is a community, so-called untouchable community, and I studied in a scheduled caste welfare hostel, where there is a student organization named Progressive Democratic Student Union, which keep raising the issues of the several issues for the students, like fees hike or minimum facilities to be provided to the students, and certain issues, and also some of the political issues were taken up by the students union. So that is the where I exposed myself to the politics of this student union, and rising voice for the justice. So that is the beginning point where I have started my activism as a career, and I continued that in my life. As of now, I am working on the issues of the marginalized.
Yeah, thank you for the answer. What significant achievement and challenges have you faced while organizing human rights campaigns in Telangana and Andhra Pradesh? Could you share some memorable experience while representing clients in court and working on human rights campaign?
Okay, so there are two things. One is the campaigns, which is outside the court, and so when it comes to the campaigns that in which I am part of, one successful campaign is the child labor issue. So there is a rampant violation of child rights. Many children were brought in from the rural areas to Hyderabad, and they were kept as a domestic child laborers. In 2005 to 6, I involved in rescuing the domestic child laborers on behalf of Human Rights Law Network. I worked with the Human Rights Law Network as a legal officer, and I was part of the rescuing the domestic child laborers. So that time, the law, which is prohibition and regulation of domestic child labor, is defined domestic child labor as non-hazardous thing, and domestic child laborers were allowed. So when the actual position is that these domestic child laborers were confined in the homes, and they were harassed, and they were tortured by their owners, and in that scenario, we have rescued 23 domestic child laborers in Hyderabad and Secunderabad twin cities. And we launched a campaign against domestic child labor. And all these domestic child laborers are from the marginalized communities who are poor and rural background. And this campaign led to a policy change that domestic child labor is not non-hazardous, but it is hazardous. And children below the 14 and 16 years should not be permitted in domestic child labor as employees. So that was the change that took place with this campaign. That is one of the kind of small success. And also campaign on the um, uh, children in conflict with law. They are also like who are the children from the marginalized communities only. I bailed out around 200 such children who are conflict with law. So this is the campaigns that I was involved in outside the court, but inside the courts, several challenges were there because the judiciary is not sensitive, is not caste sensitive. Caste is not recognized. Even there are specific legislations to recognizing caste. And from the marginalized communities, there is absolutely no representation in the judiciary. There are no judges, there are no superintendents, there are no judicial officers in courts who are who can be sensitive towards the issues of the marginalized communities. When the case of scheduled caste or scheduled tribe being represented in the court, the judges or the judicial officers becomes there will be a swift change in the mind of the officers, and they may not make any adverse comments, but they silently um, close the case or not give any relief. So that is the kind of attitude still prevalent in the Indian judiciary. And in one of my case where a scheduled caste woman, uh, a, she was raped at the age of 14 years, and she was given a house plot by the government only. And now the house plot has become this center in the village, kind of it is a main village. So that what village people did, she removed her house, and her land was taken, and her plot was made as a playground. So in this case, I approached the High Court. High Court has issued the order to demarcate her flat, but when government did not do it because revenue authorities and village non-scheduled castes are colluded, and they together fighting against this vulnerable woman. And the court also, we filed a contempt. I filed a contempt because court order is not complied. I filed a contempt. Even in the contempt also, judge is not taking any contempt proceedings further. He is supposed to uh, call the officers who are not implementing the order and ask them to implement or go to jail. This should be the case, but it is like they they are kept it pending like that. So the point is here I want to make it is, when it comes to the issues of the marginalized communities, courts are reluctant to pass orders, even though in necessary cases if they pass orders, the courts are not ensuring that their orders are implemented. So this is the biggest challenge before the uh, activists and advocates. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very true. Even we find that the legal cases of the communities are neglected and ignored. With that,
Yeah.
my third question is,
Yeah.
what are the most common form of discrimination and injustice faced by Dalits in India? And what
Mm.
effective measures can be taken to address these issues? What is your approach of handling legal cases related to Dalits and caste discrimination? And what strategies do you use to ensure justice is served?
There are two things. First thing, this word Dalit is not recognized by the law. Uh, When it comes to the legal uh, forums, courts, or administrative purpose, it will be only scheduled castes. In literature and in public discourse, the Dalit word is used, but not in the courts. That is a legal position. And there are two kinds of uh, things happens. One is atrocities, second is discrimination. Discriminations are 100 above forms. I have the list. The forms of discriminations committed on scheduled castes in India, there will be 100 and above. I listed out 116 forms of discriminations. So all discriminations are not atrocities, because the Prevention of Atrocities Act recognizes only 23 forms of discriminations as atrocities. So the point is, uh, starting from the um, caste name, abusing on the name of caste, and and uh, and not allowing scheduled caste to walk on the public way, and not allowing scheduled caste to sit in the same bench in the school, not allowing scheduled caste to visit temple, and so there are several forms of untouchabilities and discriminations are practiced as on today. And there are modern forms of atrocities and discriminations in modern days in urban areas. There is urban rules of untouchabilities, like no rent, house rents were given to the scheduled castes, and to avoid that, they keep a board saying that only vegetarians are allowed. In some places, they openly write that scheduled castes are not allowed for renting their houses. These are the forms of discriminations not recognized by the law. So there comes the difficulty in fighting such discriminations. When the discrimination is not defined by the law, no court can interfere with that kind of position. So only 23 forms of discrimination is identified by the Scheduled Caste Scheduled Tribe Prevention of Atrocities Act. So that 23 comes like abusing, touching the caste, or making scheduled caste paraded nakedly, or not allowing scheduled caste to vote, not allowing scheduled caste to contest in the election. So some there are 23. So these 23 offenses only we can go to the police station, get a FIR registered, and go to the court. But other forms of atrocities, several other forms of atrocities are existing in the society, which are needs to be included in the prevention of atrocities.
Yeah, that's very true, and it is really sad to hear that. But what changes do you believe are necessary in legal system and to better protect the rights of marginalized communities such as Dalits? And how can these reforms
So
be
see,
implemented?
I can tell you, if there is a political will, the law can be implemented. Without a political will, and there should be some uh, like you can see there are two legislations in India. One is the Scheduled Caste Scheduled Tribe Prevention of Atrocities Act. Another is Special Economic Zones Act. So both goes contrary. For example, Special Economic Zones Act, nobody asked for the implementation. People actually protest against implementation of special economic zones because on the name of special economic zones, agricultural fertile lands were taken by the government and given to the corporates. That is what Special Economic Zones Act. This Special Economic Zones Act is opposed and protested against by the people. But still it gets implemented in very smooth way that it happens. The other side, so the Prevention of Atrocities Act, people struggle and everyday organize protests for the implementation, but it will not be implemented. So what is the difference means this Special Economic Zones Act is to benefit the so-called upper caste, corporates, and wealthy people. Scheduled Caste Scheduled Tribe Prevention of Atrocities Act is there to protect the marginalized community. So which law can be implemented? Only the law which can be benefited to the upper caste, so-called upper caste, will be implemented. So why so? Because there is a political will in the government machinery and legislative that this law only can be implemented. This law cannot be implemented. So it is a hidden agenda of the ruling class. If that continues, the no law can be implemented. I tell you one example. I attended I gave a session on Scheduled Caste Scheduled Tribe Prevention of Atrocities Act in National Police Academy, where all the super cops are present, where DIG rank, SP rank, police commissioner rank officers were present there. I gave a talk for 40 minutes. I told them that this is the law and your police officers are not willing to implement this law because no FIR is registered easily against the so-called upper caste. So you, being a police officer, should take this as the opportunity to issue some circular, or there is a mandatory registration of FIR in SC cases. This is a law, and this law is not being implemented by the police authorities at the police station level. So after my session, everybody appreciated, and one police officer came to me and told these social protection legislations are tongue cleaners. So nobody ensures this implementation because they only powerful people can only force the government or courts or forums to implement the law in favor of them. But poor marginalized has to bear the burden, and they are not in a position to force government or courts to or forums to implement the law in their favor. So this is a kind of dilemma that still there are law which is not fully equipped, which is not fully defined human rights of the scheduled caste, but still there is a law, and the law is there, but there is no mechanism to implement the law, and there is no social atmosphere to implement the law. So when there is lack of social atmosphere, there is no resources, there is no mechanism. How can this law be implemented? So that is the biggest challenge. So everything to implement, if government is willing, then only it will force its machinery to implement the law. So there is no willingness in the government. It cannot be implemented. For example, in the state level vigilance and monitoring committee, which is to monitor the implementation of Prevention of Atrocities Act, the chief minister is the chairman of this committee, vigilance and monitoring committee. But the fact is that the chief minister himself don't know that he is the chairman of this committee, and he never organized a meeting. So this is a pathetic condition of the social protection legislation. So yeah,
Yeah, you said it right. There is a law, but there is no implementation on that. There is no mechanism for that
yeah.
implementation. Dr.
Hmm.
Navayan, how does the current political and social climate in India impact the fight for Dalit rights and against the caste discrimination? What are
So
some effective ways to raise awareness about the issues of caste-based discrimination and mobilize support for the cause?
I don't see any difference between the present political and social climate and earlier political and social climate, because BJP is ruling India. It is a hardcore Hindutva party. Openly, it claims, and it speaks. But and its actions also is, same against the poor and marginalized. In the similar way, earlier Congress party also, it never claimed it as a Hindutva party, but it is a Hindutva party. It was a Hindutva party, and there were mass murders of scheduled castes happened in the ruling of Congress party. So I don't see any difference in practicing Hindutva ideology in Congress and BJP. Both are same. The like so when it comes to the social climate is sharpening the contradictions day to day. After implementation of reservations, there are a economically well-off class established in scheduled caste in India. So there is a change in the nature of atrocities. Earlier, scheduled castes were beaten up and raped, paraded nakedly. Their lands were grabbed. These things are routine, even happening now in rural India. But when it comes to the economically well-off scheduled castes, the atrocity forms are changed. Like the employed scheduled castes were never given promotions. They were denied on several grounds, false grounds. And scheduled caste officers were implicated in corruption charges. And these are glaring cases where purposefully these officers were implicated in cases and demoted. And these modern atrocities were emerging, and modern forms of discrimination are emerging, like creative untouchabilities. So, to fighting against these forms of atrocities, I believe that we should continue our fight, despite there may not be any immediate relief, immediate results. Point is to make sure that the castes who are so-called upper caste should not think that the fight is closed. There should be someone in the battleground to say that fight is still going on. So I think I have faced many defeats in my struggle against the cases. One of my client, where I fighting a land case, my client is murdered, but still I am fighting the case with his wife. I took his wife as a legal representative in the course, and case is going on. So the thing is that there should be a constant and a non-stop fight against the all discriminations, and basically against the caste system, to for annihilation of caste system.
Yeah, that's really impressive, Dr. Navayan, and impressive that you are still fighting for that case. Uh, with that, my sixth question is: could you discuss some successful initiative and programs you have been involved in that promote Dalit rights and empower marginalized communities?
So one case I can tell you, in Chhattisgarh, I worked as a manager for business and human rights in Amnesty International India in 2016 to 18. So that time my job was to organize and fight for the land rights of the indigenous people. So, earlier to me, there were some research were conducted on the land grabbing of scheduled tribe people, and some campaigns were run, and some petitions were filed before the district collectors for the compensation on the lands which are grabbed by the uh, government and also private companies. When it comes to the Adivasis, that is indigenous people, government also acting very ruthlessly, like taking land. This in central India, there are minerals in the land. Like coal is the mineral commonly available in this, lands of Adivasis. So Adivasis are evicted and dispossessed. Their lands were taken by the government also, like NTPC and Coal India. And similarly, private companies also taking the lands of Adivasis by like making them to sign on the blank papers, and it is kind of forgery and cheating that what private companies adapted. The methods are cheating and forgery. So what I did is I developed a strategy to see that the dispossession of scheduled tribes are criminal. It is a criminal uh, action of the private companies. To establish that, I conducted a research and found that Scheduled Caste, Scheduled Tribe Prevention of Atrocities Act says, Section 31FG says that if a non-scheduled caste, non-scheduled tribe person takes the land of a scheduled tribe without his consent, that amounts to crime, and 5 years imprisonment is there. So what I did, so earlier there was no case is registered under this section if anybody interferes with the land of the scheduled tribe. So in Chhattisgarh, what I did, I mobilized 300 Adivasis, scheduled tribes, and we filed a 300 complaints against the two private companies who have taken around 300 acres of the land of Adivasis. So this made a pioneering attempt to make the dispossession of Adivasis without their consent is a crime. So in this week, it was a new initiative, like a new strategy. So uh, until then, if a land is taken, it goes to the civil court. A civil dispute is going to be instituted. But in what I did, I made it into a criminal offense. So this criminal aspect has a lot of difference. The companies were really feared of the law, and the I can say that indigenous people told me that they are empowered. They are now like very much happy and in a mood to fight against, because legally they are empowered. And earlier, they don't have this option of criminalizing the dispossession, and they were into left. It is a left extremist area. So when there is an absence of legal battle, these Adivasis were dragged into the illegal battle. So they were catch-hold by the extremist groups, uh, and they were fighting in different ways, illegal ways. So, so what I did was I created a legal way of fighting for the lands, which was effective and which given the empowerment to the local Adivasis. And one of the Adivasi women told me that they were treated like a cattle earlier by the company agents. Once they have filed the criminal complaints against them, and police telephoned to the company agents to come to the police station, then they actually realized that these Adivasis are more capable of leading a legal battle against them, and they have to be careful. The company agents have to be careful. So this is the way, one of the initiative which I did, and which is kind of half success, not full success, but it was success in empowering the and moral boosting of the community, marginalized community.
Yeah, I mean, if there is the law enforcement and empowerment is there, the half battle is already won. So how can the global community and international organization support the fight against caste-based discrimination and promote human rights in India?
So basically, international community can support the local struggles. Uh, so local struggles are led by the local people against the local atrocities. So there is, for me, I think there is no one way of fighting against the caste. Fighting against caste is a regional thing. In Telangana, we fight in different ways. In Maharashtra, in different ways. In Tamil Nadu, different ways. In Karnataka, different ways. So there is the evolution of a movement is in different ways, but ultimately it will fight against the oppression and uh, casteism. So these local movements are should be supported and encouraged by the uh, global organizations or global. So they should be support. Like there are, what way they can support is to bringing the local issues into the mainstream, like mainstream papers or global audience. One way, and second thing is resources. Locally, there are very less resources. People fight with bare minimum. So, if, for example, take legal battle. Legal battle requires a lot of money involved in like documentation of cases, and there are several stages fighting a legal battle. There needs a lot of research and documentation, which requires the humans to sit and do. And so that is where this scheduled caste, scheduled right communities are very weak. Like they do not have sufficient means to fight against the oppressors in the courts. So, that is where I think the global community can support by providing resources, by also by taking up the issues to the global level.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that.
Yeah.
My last question is, what message would you like to convey to those who are struggling with the effect of caste-based discrimination and seeking support and guidance?
So my advice is to keep fighting, keep keep fighting, and there is no so caste is a system which existed in this subcontinent from the hundreds of years, if not thousands. And day to day, caste is a dynamic, and it is not static. It keep changing. Caste is keep changing. Like some of the communities which are branded as Shudras is now claiming as Kshatriyas, and once their financial and social position is grown, they claim Kshatriyas. So that way, so the fight against caste is to be updated and continued. And as I said earlier, it should not be only one way fight. It should be multiple ways. It should be multiple groups fighting against the caste, and continue the battle until annihilation of caste, and to establish a egalitarian society.
Yeah, we should fight against the caste discrimination.
Yeah.
With that, thank you very, very, very much, Dr. Navayan, for taking your time from busy schedule for this interview. I'm indebted to you for this, for that.
Thank you.
Have a good day.